Be really careful and, help your appraiser as much as you can.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of a perfect storm, right? Because you could have 2 or 3 short sales or foreclosures, but then there's some equity sales in that same neighborhood that are still seeing that rapid appreciation rate. And so you have a few comps that are really dragging it down, and then a few other comps that are really pulling it up at a faster pace.
Right.
Yeah.
What you want to do is when you give your appraisal all the comps and stuff, this is the ones you want to use, and these are the ones that are there, because he's going to pull them up anyway.
Right.
You just have to make sure that he knows what's happening with those.
So don't bury a comp.
Correct.
Don't try to act like it's not there, because they have
they're
access.
Going to find it.
They're going to find it too, right?
Because they have MLS access. Trust me.
A secret entrance only for the appraiser.
And sometimes they even have a little bit more information because they'll go into the tax records and stuff like that and pull up things that we don't have.
Right.
So it's always good to, as I say again, be nice to your appraiser.
Yes, just like everyone else in the transaction. So what about the owner that does a whole lot of high-end finishes, and maybe they get disappointed because they put in a brand new kitchen for themselves, and maybe the market perceived it as a really high value, but the appraiser walks through and puts a different valuation on it. How do you deal with that?
That's always the case.
Yeah.
You kind of have to tell your people when you do it, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. Like when you put in a pool, they might have spent $50,000 or $75,000, and an appraiser's only going to give them about 10 to 15.
Right.
And that goes with a lot of things. Remodeled kitchens usually come in first. Bathrooms come in second. Recreation rooms, no, but a mother-in-law quarter or something like that will come in. And then another thing.
Those are super necessary for like a whole lot of other reasons, right?
Right. And then, painting and carpeting and stuff like that won't necessarily make the appraisal go higher, but it will make it sell faster. Because the aesthetics will be there to make it look pretty. And
so just preparing, when you're the listing agent, preparing the seller, what I heard you say is preparing the seller, because they're going to see the appraisal.
Right.
And especially if it comes in short. If it comes in on the money, they aren't going to care.
Right. Actually, I wouldn't give it to the seller if it comes in at appraisal or over, because you don't want them seeing it, because that could create a can of worms.
Okay.
Because they might want to raise the price because it appraised farther.
Sure.
And it belongs to the buyer.
Okay.
The buyer has control of that, and I don't think anybody should give the seller an appraisal unless it's short.
Okay. Then if it is short, they're going to see it, right?
Right.
They're going to say, I spent...
Well, not necessarily will they see it. They'll just hear about what's been happening, what came in, and what happened with the appraisal.
Okay. All right. So now the worst case scenario, a listing doesn't appraise, right? Maybe because it's overdeveloped for the neighborhood. Maybe the appraiser just had a miss for whatever reason. What are your options? Can an agent challenge an appraisal? What do you do at that point?
You can challenge it. It's getting harder and harder to challenge it because most of your lenders, anybody that sells to the secondary market, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they go through a pool of appraisers, which is HVCC controlled or whatever, which started in 10. So it's harder to go through and challenge because lenders don't have the ability to talk to an appraiser anymore because of the pool.
Right.
So you have to go in and really prove that, there's something wrong. So you go in, yes, you can get in a second appraisal, and yes, you can give them comps. The other things that you can do is, of course, you can cancel the contract. The buyer could pay more, negotiate back and forth, maybe a second, or there's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
Okay. This is from the audience, can you share an experience you had with an appraiser or appraisal that went wrong? And then how were you able to influence it positively or make it work and make it go?
The comps that they used were not the proper comps. Say, for an example, take Discovery Bay area. You have an out-of-area appraiser coming in. They don't know the difference between the neighborhoods, whether it be high-end neighborhood, low-end, whether it be golf course, whether it be deep water or whatever, and showing them how to, use the proper comps in the proper neighborhood or whatever.
So deep water has a valuation that's associated with it. If it's an appraiser that's not familiar with that area.
Correct. They wouldn't know the difference.
They wouldn't know the difference.
And the same in a gated community. If they don't know the difference, a gated community will cost more than a non-gated community and stuff like that.
Especially with things like the deep water slips and that could be across the street. You could have a model match that looks like a comp,
but it's not deep water. It's about $100,000 difference.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. So how else have you influenced this? So let's go like really super tactical. Okay. So I'm a newer licensee. I've got my first listing. I've got it into contract. And I come sit down with you at your desk and go, okay, I heard you on the radio show. I've got my first appraisal. I'm going to go meet them. Tell me what to do.
Okay, first of all, I'd have your seller write down everything that they have done to the property. If they've done countertops, if they've
Now,
done
what if they
a
did it like 6
bathroom.
years ago? Doesn't matter?
Right, just have them write the time and the date of everything they've done. That's added ammunition.
Okay.
Sit down and go through your comps. Pick out apples to apples. You know, you want a $700,000 appraisal. Get a $7,000 appraisal. Know what's in your property. You know, pick out if it has corian tops or, you know, wood floors or whatever, and just pick all that stuff out so you can have it for your appraisal.
So find the most comparable comps.
And be nice to them.
Yeah.
And smile.
Now, how do you make sure? Because sometimes I know that appraisers, they've got lockbox keys. They've got MLS access. Like, do you take lockboxes off your listings so that the only way to get access is through you? How tightly do you manage that process?
Oh, that's a good idea. But no, I haven't.
Thanks. That's why I make the little bucks.
Big bucks.
Yeah.
No, I just kind of hope to have the appraisal, and I will always call the lender or the other agent and say, I haven't heard from the appraiser. What's going on? Please have them call me.
Got it. So on the listing side especially, you should hear from the appraiser within how many days of getting an escrow, in your opinion?
I'd say 10,
Okay.
10 to 15.
Within 10 to 15. So, because otherwise it's going to delay, right?
Right.
Yeah. So sometimes buyers are maybe wanting to do inspections before they order the appraisal because it's an expense for the buyer. So they might be dragging their feet on it a little
And it
bit
depends on the loan, too. They want that basically approved before they go out and do an appraisal.
because they want to spend the money if they aren't going to get the deal.
Correct.
Okay. So construction list, make sure you're there.
Yes.
Schedule the showing.
Yes.
Make sure you're there. I'm going through the highlights of what
And
I
make
heard.
sure the house is clean.
Right. Right. It's almost like another open house, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Always have that, you know, sparkling and et cetera, the lawns mowed and, you know, the drapes open, the windows cleaned and stuff like that.
Everything you can do to make a good first impression.
Right. All you're doing is making an impression for an appraiser goes, wow, nice.
And then do you have a packet that you bring with you to the appraisal? Is it got
Hard copies, right, of the appraisals and et cetera. Just give them everything that you can come up with.
Okay. So you're pulling all the comps, everything that you feel that tells
Also,
the right
you
story.
might also want to bring some actives.
Okay.
And pendings, because the market is changing so much. I've heard sometimes that they do use actives to go in and look at it because our market is going up so high. So, you know, take a look at those too because that will affect it.
Okay. Good. Any other tips or tricks you'd give for the masses on how to do an appraisal?
No, just be nice.
Be nice. Smile. Bring your stuff.
Yep.
Make a great first impression. You have a sample. Is it just comps? You put a little love letter about who you are and how you work, or
No, I don't do that, but it wouldn't probably hurt, you know, to do that. You know, appraisers really could care less. They're out there. They don't make the markets. They're just out there to,
Reporting on
you know, report on it and what it is and stuff like that. So basic is to give them the ammunition that they need that will help them.
All right. Good deal. Sharon, thank you so much for your time today. You did a wonderful job of sharing your experience and insight with everyone that's on the radio show. So thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Quick reminder, we're going to gamble our way to karmic success here. So we're giving through gambling, which is something I enjoy. With this, we're doing our third annual poker tournament, and this one we are doing in Santa Rosa. So you can make a weekend out of it, take everyone up to the wine country, and go spend time and spend money and do it all for charity. So on Friday, September 20th, there's going to be a buffet dinner at 5:30, and then the tournament starts at 7 p.m. in Santa Rosa. Tickets are only $75. They go to the proceeds go to the Children's Village, which we've raised a bunch of money for. It keeps foster kids. If you have brothers and sisters, it keeps foster families together so they don't have to get separated and be displaced and go into different homes. So great cause, great group, super fun group to support, and we're going to gamble and give. And I'm sure I will spend way more money than I should that night, so I can't wait. It'll be a fun time. And Sharon, I'm going to ask you to hang around and stay nearby because I may ask. Yeah, good. And I may ask you some things from the agent perspective because now we have Anthony Young of Young and Associates Realty Valuation and Consulting. So I have an appraiser in the room, and we're going to we're going to ask a lot of the same questions and get some feedback from the appraiser side of the coin on how, so we now have we're going to get to pull the curtain back. We're going to see the little wizard behind the curtain and get some insight into the appraiser's mind and how they work through the same process. And Sharon, if you want to dive in at any point, this is an interactive discussion. Okay, so feel free to add color wherever feels appropriate. So Anthony, thanks. I know you run a very successful appraisal company, so thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with the real estate side of us folks over here in our radio show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad you're here. So I know I've talked to other appraisers sort of off the record, and some of them get really frustrated when agents try to, quote, educate them, and some of them appreciate the help when agents try to, quote, educate them. As far as you're concerned personally, and then maybe as an appraisal industry in general, can an agent help? Does an agent help or hurt their cause when they bring the packet of information? And how do you personally like it? And then do you think an agent should do it?
Yes, definitely think an agent should always do that. One of the big things, though, is you're dealing with a lot of different guys that range anywhere from their 20s to their 60s and their 70s.
Right.
You know, some of these guys, especially when you're dealing with a VA panel guy, they're set in their way. They're not into business. They don't have to entertain you.
So when you say VA panel guy, what does that mean?
The VA panel, which is generally a lot of older appraisers that do VA appraisals.
Yep.
And there's just a lot of guys who are just stuck in their way. There's some guys who think that because they've been doing it for so long, they put their stamp on it, and that's law, it's science, and it's really not.
Some of it is, appraisers can be a little bit like umpires in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some are balls and strikes, and I call them like I see them. And then other guys say some are balls or strikes, but they aren't anything until I tell you what they are.
Right,
You know?
absolutely. So, I mean, when we come to doing, like, bringing a packet, I always encourage an agent to bring a packet of information. But the thing is to bring some color to that information. Give me more than what's on MLS.
Don't just print the MLS.
Don't just print the MLS.
Because you can do that yourself, right?
Exactly. So if you're going to bring a set of comps, write down this is in this neighborhood. This property has this, or I took my buyer to this house. This was one of the ones that we looked at, but the garage was too small, or the kitchen, the house wasn't positioned for the view. Bring color to that sell. Mm-hmm. So, one of the things I was talking to Gina Piper about was once you it's like the quote, Keith, once you expand the mind, it can never return back to the same size.
Right.
So if you write a bunch of information there instead of talking from an because you're here to sell something.
Right.
So when we're listening to you, we're thinking you have an invested interest in moving that property, getting that value. But if you put some information that is backed up with data on those MLS sheets, that appraiser might not say in front of you, I didn't know that.
Right.
But when he or she goes back to their office, they have to either credit it or discredit it themselves because they no longer can ignore it.
Because it's been provided. So what I kind of heard you say, Ant, was take the MLS sheet and maybe for the couple of most comparable comps, give real color that the appraiser can't pull out from the MLS. So this has mountain views from the upstairs master.
Exactly.
This has a kid's playground in the backyard that there's no photos on the MLS of it, and it's not reflected in the confidential or public remarks, but it's something that a family would see real value in.
Exactly. Or something where, when we came in, we had to clean up this house and there was a bunch of animals and stuff like that. There's wood floors. We have this or we have that. There was a lot of damage, or say the last person gutted the property, things because what we were, unfortunately, every appraisal, you're supposed to go and view the comps from the street. Okay.
Right.
But a lot of guys just go on MLS. One of the things that I've seen in MLS just here in the Bay Area is the picture quality has went down considerably.
Yeah, different problem. But different radio show.
Actually, but that actually is good. It's not good for your buyer, but it's good from the appraisal standpoint because the lender wants you to take true photos.
Got it.
So what it's doing is it's getting guys to have to go out to the property because you've got an HD camera taking a picture of the subject, and you've got pixelated pictures and the things, and they can tell right away that those are MLS photos.
Got it.
So there's a lot of things like a guy will not see. They'll not see that it's right next to the park, or it's backs up to the street. So definitely bring color to those cells that people will not see. On top of that, too, if it's from...
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry,
because that's a key point that I think I've had a lot of these conversations with real estate professionals, and having the insight into the process of the appraiser, that really helps. So, yes, they're all supposed to go and take pictures. Let's also go ahead and safely assume they all don't.
Do not.
Right.
Correct.
So since they all don't, let's provide them the color as if they did or as if they didn't. So like you mentioned, next door to a park, put that in your packet.
Yeah, put it in your packet. Again, too, when we're looking at, now we always talk, we have a problem with, some banks that will go with bottom feeders, lack of better words, I'm just going to be candid today if that's okay.
Yeah,
But
please.
it's just bottom feeder guys who will go out there for any price.
Yeah.
Well, what we can do, too, is they don't know that neighborhood. Like, for instance, she spoke about Discovery Bay. Yes, we've got what kind of dock we have, where we're at. If we're deep water, is it going to take me 45 minutes to get going, or is it going to take me 10 minutes to get going? Or are we off water? Are we on water? Are we ungated? Are we, So what you can do, too, is instead of just telling from your personal knowledge, because that's the same thing that I try to educate appraisers on. It's like, it's not, in my experience in this neighborhood anymore. It's, let's back this up. There's enough data out there. So one thing that I always point appraisers and agents to is a website called neighborhoodscout.com.
So I'm going to repeat that for everyone, neighborhoodscout.com. And why do you go to that website? What's there?
Because what it takes it away from you as the agent, and it brings it to a third party. And what that website does is it compares and breaks up the boundaries of neighborhoods based on price. So, and you'd be surprised how close you can get in. It's not going to go by major boundaries or major streets. It will cut right through a neighborhood if for some reason the price changes.
Like school scores, for example, because one street could be in a certain school, the next street over could be in a different school. So school scores, and that will make a big difference.
And the price reflects that. So again, that helps educate the appraiser on something that he can't ignore. So you can say, hey, this neighborhood right here, you're going to see this comp because it's just right behind. So it's going to be a tenth of a mile away. But if you look at the median price of that neighborhood, it's $150,000 versus our neighborhood is $220,000.
Right.
So you convert that to a percentage, and that gives your difference. But that's a whole nother.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, nerd. Yeah. So, do you think it's almost what I hear you saying is an agent should almost provide the comps fine, but almost do a written, and I don't know about a one pager, but a written summary of some of the key differences of the subject property that you might not observe unless you were physically at the property.
Exactly.
And then provide some color for the couple of most comparable comps. So, 1, 2, 3 Elm, and it might even be a comp that someone could pull that would be wrong. So 1, 2, 3 Elm is $60,000 less, but it's in the blank school district. And here's why it's $60,000 less, especially if it's a model match or it's one block away in the same square footage. An appraiser might pull that and go, why is this one $60,000 less? Give them the answer to those kinds of questions.
Yeah, answer the questions. And one of the things, you definitely have these neighborhoods that you go into. Like if we're going back to Discovery Bay, or we go back to some areas where, it's cookie cutter. There, you could throw a rock in the air and get it right, okay? But it's just like, when you're talking about writing a contract, for a purchase. You tell an agent, fill it out completely. Have everything ready when you submit it. Yes, it takes more time, but submit everything, right? So this process, does it take more time? Yes, but at the end of the day, that's what you're getting paid for. And the difference of you taking that extra hour to bring that color to whatever appraiser comes there, whether they see you or not, you leave it on the counter. That might be the difference between a commission check, being where it is, or you worried about it being reduced, and then you have to call my company to do your rebuttal assistance.
Right, which we're going to get to later. Shameless plug. That's Anthony Young of Young & Associates that does appraisal rebuttal services for a fee. Well, more on that later. Stay tuned. So let's just, just to frame it up again, everything that Sharon said, as an appraiser, you don't mind or would prefer to receive from a realtor. And then on top of that, add in sort of a one-pager that gives you color around the property, color on the comps.
Yeah, but, again, more just to the comps. Step out from seeing like you're just avoiding a sell or you're doing this. Tell me why. This one, hey, it's an outlier, especially when we deal with the definition of market value, right? That was a big problem when the market was started going down. You've got short sales, you've got bank owns, you've got, equity, you've got a lot of different things going on. Well, in this market right now, there's not as many of those distressed sales. So that doesn't fall under the definition of market value. So you can tag them from there if they use a bunch of short sales in a neighborhood that has more than 60% regular sales. Because the typical buyer is not, at this time, the way that the market is moving, the typical buyer is not going to wait out for a short sale.
Right.
Because in the time they wait out for the short sale, say that doesn't close, or whatever the case is, the market has now increased 4, 5, 6%, and now they're priced out of that segment. So that's not something I would entertain, a short sale. If you've got money, you're ready to go, you're buying a regular sell,
right.
The appraiser should use a regular sell.
Okay. So a couple quick questions. One, we've had a few people ask, what was that website again? And it's neighborhoodscout.com. neighborhoodscout.com, and we'll push out an email with a link to that website to everyone that's on the radio show so that they can just click on it and go check it out. But it's neighborhoodscout.com. Go ahead, Anthony.
And how to use that site is basically you go in and if you have, your property addresses, you plug in a property address, it'll bring up what neighborhood it is in. Mm-hmm. And then you click on the dot, it'll tell you the median price of that neighborhood. And you can tell all the comps are from the subject's competing neighborhood or they're from a different one. The reverse is when you have that special property that maybe is newer in an older area and you've got to find other competitive neighborhoods that they can go to, you can do just a city-wide. Just pull in the city, and it'll give you different shades of blue to show you the higher price, the lower price. You find similar shades, that's a competitive neighborhood.
Okay. A couple questions from the audience, Anthony. First question is, how did you get such a great voice? No, I'm just kidding. Nobody asked that. I totally. Yeah, Sharon did. I just wanted to make you blush because it's funny when you blush.
Are you my father, Keith?
No, I'm not. Now I'm blushing. Do you use actives or pendings?
Absolutely, and that's another thing too. Where when the market started to change, we had some appraisers that maybe I won't tell them where they're at, but basically, we need to get to the thing where when you're taking a buyer around, are you taking them to properties that sold 6 months ago? Or are you taking them to something that's on the market right now? Mm-hmm. And it's about when we're looking at properties, what are we competing against the market right now? So solds are yesterday, pendings are today, actives are tomorrow.
Right.
And everything needs to be adjusted to bring it to the effective date of the appraisal, which is the inspection date.
Okay, good. And then we're going to talk more about this later, but if it does, let me make sure we're going to, we'll get to it later because we're going to talk about rebuttals later. Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure we dig in on that. So we've talked about educating the appraiser. Let's skip ahead and talk about what mistakes do agents make. How does an agent, quote, get it wrong, unquote, with an appraiser? And maybe some of the art and the science around that. Some of the what are some of the big mistakes you see that agents make when working with you?
The biggest mistake, it goes back to what we just talked about. Mm-hmm. Not, you hope that they know what they're doing. Just in our business, there's agents that are professionals. There's guys who just came in part-time. They don't know the market. They don't know anything. They just have a license and they get a listing. Okay.
Right.
We have the same thing in appraisal. You have guys who just did the minimum to get in. There's guys who have taken it to the next level and actually learned market analysis. So, mm-hmm. One of the things, again, if it's a cookie-cutter neighborhood where you cannot get it wrong, you don't have to go through all this work.
Right.
You're walking into Antioch and it's a neighborhood of 3,000 homes, it's fine. You're
right.
good. If you did your job, the market did their job, the appraiser will be able to do their job. But if you're walking into something more complex, bring color to those comps.
Yeah.
It's basically that really, if we nip it in the bud.
Yeah. Do you find sometimes agents can be too pushy, maybe, too kind of in your grill about don't screw this up,
well,
blah, blah, blah.
It's not necessarily about screwing it up. We just always have to remember we're dealing with adults. We're dealing with professionals. People, right. Whether they are truly professional or they view themselves as a professional,
right.
Everybody has an ego,
mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So when you come in, and that's what I'm saying, being more passive when you're passing that information, because if you're coming in and you're educating them, they already think they know everything. Just like if you talk to an agent about how is the market doing at a martini bar, they're going to give you all regardless, they
right.
think that they're the expert, and
right.
it's a science. So when you're giving them that passive information, it's easier to absorb. They can take it home and deal with it themselves versus trying to question them, trying to basically show that you're superior in knowledge, whether you may or may not be. Because we got to this fact: not everybody in this business, even though it's a face-to-face business, there's businessmen and there's appraisers,
right,
and there's agents, right.
Right.
We've met agents before that aren't the most
savvy,
impressive people.
Right.
They're really not people person. And the same thing with appraisers. So you're not always going to have that mix, but if you can try to educate them without, it's kind of like teaching a kid how to play piano before he knows that he's learning something.
Right. So don't be condescending. Don't
never be mad at an appraiser. Don't get upset.
Right.
Don't be mad at an appraiser. Don't get upset. Work with them.
Yeah. It's sort of like when you get a counteroffer, right? To put it in real estate ease, when you get a counteroffer, or even if you get a low offer, right, on a listing, don't be upset. Don't take it personally. It's an offer. It's an opportunity to begin the negotiation. Yeah. And you get a lot more, what's that? You get a lot more bees with honey, or I don't know why we would. I don't know why we want bees, but anyway, you're more successful if you're nice to people than if you're a piece of poo. There's my version of it. So be kind to people as you are going into the transaction with them. Don't say, hey, you suck at your job, here's the comps. Consider it one more person in the transaction that you are having a professional experience with to try to help them do their job better.
That actually brings us to something when you say about mistakes that we make, right?
Yep.
Say something happens. Say the appraiser has an off day. Say he's rushing through, whatever, and everything's not hitting on point. Calling him and yelling at him or saying he's dumb and he doesn't know, what is that going to get? It's just like the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, I need you to get me here. Mm-hmm. So how can I? Well, guess what? It didn't come in at value or something. Here's another opportunity for you to educate him and help him out. It's not, you were wrong. Who wants to perform? At that point in time, he can choose to shut down and say, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Or you can say, you know what? Maybe, oh, wow, I don't know why I didn't, because just like you missed sales.
Sharon is doing me, please, baby, please, James Brown approach.
Just like you miss sales, or sometimes when we're doing our searches that we might miss something or we didn't see something, or maybe it's like, well, why didn't we use that one? So it's just an opportunity to come in, again, there's less ego, more paycheck.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's a great book on this called Nudge, which is really just all about the subtle, minute ways you can influence key decision makers and key influencers in a process. And it's called Nudge. I forget the author, but very good book really on this topic about how there are a handful of things in people that if you influence them throughout the process, and in our example, it would be probably listing agent, appraiser, home inspector, as you can, perfect. It's Nudge by Cass Sunstein. Just pulled up for me and put in my face. Thanks, Anthony. But it really talks about the subtle ways that you can change and influence different things in the process and the importance of that. All right, so Anthony, now we've had the horror story happen and an appraisal doesn't come in at value. And, there are times, look, I know some buyer's agents whose strategy has been, let me write at a big, ridiculous, insane number and we'll let the appraiser cut it back. And I know that that's a strategy that's happened, that's out there. So sometimes people are doing that. Fine, we're not going to, or maybe we should talk about that in a minute. But let's say this is one that you truly feel does not accurately reflect the home's value. And how do we challenge or rebut it with the appraiser?
How do we challenge and rebut it? The first thing that I talk about with guys is using, again, we need to get away, I don't like to say need, but we would like to get away from using the invested interest standpoint, because as soon as you come to me and you challenge, you have an invested interest, your paycheck's on the line.
Right.
I don't sell the houses, I just report them, right? So the biggest thing where I tell guys is use their own information against them. And this is where, hey, I'm swinging for both sides of the fence, because at the end of the day, we just need to be professionals and do it correctly. Like an agent asked me, is the property going to come in? Well, guess what? If you did your job, the market did their job, I do my job, we should be going on, right? But if somebody is not, somebody's doing too much or somebody's whatever. So we're going to, back to the point, is when we're working within a report, an appraisal report cross checks itself. So if you have an appraisal, you say the value doesn't come in. First thing you go is you look at the trends. Are they marking shortage, in demand, or is the neighborhood increasing and marketing times under 3 months? And then on the 1004 MC, which is the new form that's been out, I think, a year or 2 years now, the market conditions form, it shows in the last 6 months there's been 6 sales, in each quarter, and the markets went up from 360 to 370. I mean, from 360 to 400.
One of the challenges we really saw at the end of Q1 going into Q2 of 2012 is a lot of the appraisal reports were showing a downward trending market in an environment where it was upward trending, right? Where the real truth was there was multiple offers on every property, but the aged inventory, the solds, and the Case-Shiller report and everything else that was coming out was being positioned as this is a downward trending market. When the practical reality was, because I get it, appraisers have a tough job. They're 30 to 60 to 90 days late when it comes to the market if they're only using solds. How does that, in a shifting market, like what we're seeing now, right?
Again, what you're saying right now, the question you asked ties into what I was saying.
Okay, good.
So when we're looking at the market conditions report, and it shows the market has increased in the last 6 months from 360 to 400, right?
Yep.
You go to the appraisal. If the appraiser didn't make any time adjustments on the sales from the contract date of the comparables, we're missing 2, 3, 4% because it might have sold last month, but it went into escrow 60 days ago. And so when you're talking about the KSHO and all these different things that are lagging, yes, that's great. That's a macro perspective. We're supposed to be zooming into the neighborhood, and the neighborhood will tell the truth, regardless of anything else. So again, it comes down to making the time adjustments in the sales. And it's just like, I see an audit I was doing a couple weeks ago where we had a property. It was actually a competing agency where they priced the house at $375. The appraiser came in at $355. My office did the audit. The value of the house is actually $390 because there's so much information. They weren't doing the time adjustments from the contract date to the comps, and they didn't make the list price to sales price ratio adjustment, which is something to educate the appraiser on because it tells you, hey, on an average, we're getting 6% over list.
Right.
So each one of those pending sales that's in the report need a 6% adjustment. If the active has been on the market and competed for a little bit, that needs the adjustment also. So that's where we're missing that $20,000 to $40,000 is the difference between your check and a reduced check.
Right. Right. So how does I get the appraisal in, and I'm the listing agent, and it comes, or the buyer's agent. I'm the buyer's agent. The appraisal comes in, and it comes in light. What do I do? What's the first thing I do?
First thing you do is print that report off, and look. Are there time adjustments? Are there list price to sales price ratio adjustments? Okay. The next thing from there are the comps from the neighborhood. Now, again, don't tell me this neighborhood sell more. Take it away from yourself and put it on a published third party. So go to Neighborhood Scout and write down on your rebuttal, hey, this is from a neighborhood that is 3 or 4% less than our neighborhood per this website. So you're breaking down and you're using their information. It's not your information. It's their own information.
Right.
That's convicting them that they didn't do they're basically using a template. They're on autopilot. They're throwing everything in there, and they're not making the adjustments. So you use their information.
Okay.
And then focus on location, focus on time adjustments. That's your first stop.
Okay. So use third-party data. Don't make it as much now. Originally, you might want to put some personal color on it before you go into the appraisal process. But now that it's rebuttal time, you want to start to move towards third-party data so that it's not you're not playing tug of war with the appraiser at this point. You're coming at it from a standpoint of, hey, I'm a little confused because Neighborhood Scout said blank, as opposed to you're a dummy, you're wrong, let me show you why you're wrong. Let's collaborate in finding the right answer on this. Hey, I'm confused because I found this and this and this. Absolutely. Can you help shed some light onto that?
Because when we're looking at it again, from the lender, from the underwriter, from the appraiser, from every other standpoint, the agents have the invested interest in the paycheck. Nobody else does. Right. So it's not. I'm not here for it. I'm not here to watch it sell or not sell. I'm just here to report what's there. So again, when you're going to that, you're taking it away from you, saying, hey, it's not me that's saying this. All the published information. The market's been going up at this rate. Even if you look at Zillow trend chart, truly a trend chart, you look at DQ News that shows that the neighborhood went up 20% in the last 12 months.
Right.
And you're telling me there's no time adjustments bringing these sales to current day?
And so the biggest, I won't call it mistake, but the biggest area to explore first, how about that, when you're rebutting an appraisal is market adjustments.
Time adjustments, absolutely.
Yeah, time and market adjustments, and the comps that they picked or maybe didn't pick.
Right. Yeah, because there's a lot of areas, whether we're in San Ramon, Danville, anywhere in the Tri-Valley, when you're in Richmond, dealing with Richmond Annex, when you're dealing in El Cerrito, Albany, I don't care where you are. There's these breakup of neighborhoods, and that's the first place that I stop. As soon as I get the rebuttal in, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, where are the time adjustments? If they're not being time adjusted, that's our gap.
Right.
And then from there, we will dig in further and further. Because it's one of those things, you can get the appraisal reassigned if you can find error or competency, and we're gonna point out competency first.
Now, how do I? Because on the real estate side, we want to collaborate with the appraiser. We certainly don't want to start locking sabers with them and make it a street fight. So, what's the right way? Like super tactical now. What's the right way to call the appraiser? Or should I call? Should I email? Like really tactical. I get it in. Well, but you do get it in. The buyer gets it in, so you see who did the appraisal, right? So how do I initiate that rebuttal process? Do I do it through my lender? Can I reach out to the appraiser directly? What's the right way to do it?
Well, in most cases, right, so we have certain companies that, certain banks that have their own staff, their own appraisers, their own, even though, it might be a different company that's calling the customer, it's owned by, like, Rails is owned by Wells Fargo. Lindervan is owned by Provident, So the thing is that the appraiser cannot make a change when they're dealing with an AMC and not a direct bank, right?
So say that, what does that mean? An appraiser cannot make the change?
The appraiser cannot change an appraisal and resubmit an appraisal unless it's requested by the bank.
Got it.
So calling the appraiser, and that's the whole thing about loading this up. You're loading this up in the beginning so that you don't have to deal with hopefully a lot of this stuff. But when you do, it makes no sense to call the appraiser. Get your stuff together, file true information that has nothing to do with your invested interest.
Sure.
Submit it through the loan officer to the lender, because the lender can now say, hey, this is valid, this is concrete. Sharon's leaning in.
Sharon's
scared.
Yeah,
right
don't be
already.
afraid.
And then another thing with the home evaluation code that went in at 209. Okay, all your lenders that submit to the secondary market have to go through a pool of appraisers. We're not allowed to talk to the lender. To the appraisal. The lenders are not allowed to talk to the appraiser. So they have to go back through this pool. How does that affect everything?
It doesn't affect anything. I mean, it's one of those things. It's, again, just learning how to play the game. All they did is change the rules. So now you got to learn how to play the game. So when you get your rebuttal process, you submit that back to the AMC, and it goes into the lender.
What's an AMC?
The AMC is the appraisal management company that she's talking about. You're talking about the pool of appraisers. So calling the appraiser doesn't matter if you call the appraiser, because if you put together enough hard data, the underwriter themselves or the AMC, because what happens is the account exec, right, for the bank, that is the one who is hiring the AMC, they can say, look at all this information. This is hard data. I don't want that appraiser doing any more work for any of my offices, and I've seen that letter go out to appraisers. So if that appraiser is just completely out of, there's no vengeance, but hey, if you're not competent enough to do this job, I don't want you working on anything in that neighborhood. So again, get your info. Hold on, Sharon. Get that information.
I've officially lost control of the radio show. I'm going to sit back and observe.
Again, get that information together and get it to the lender, but make it detailed.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I forgot.
You forgot?
Yeah, I forgot.
That's Anthony's tactic. He'll normally keep talking until you forget.
Convince them, confuse them.
Yeah, right. So really what you're highlighting is the importance of working with the lender that Sharon just remembered. Go ahead, Sharon, go.
And the other thing that you could do, too, is if you get called by an appraiser on this pool of appraisals through the secondary market, you can ask them questions and find out if they are familiar with the area, and you can also say no, and you can get another appraiser.
Yeah, you can, definitely. I agree with that. But then at the same time, you talk to a guy like me, we can turn the shop around. So it really doesn't, again, let's not focus on the negative side of it. Let's get away from the negative, because we have just this view that appraisers ruined everything, and it's not really the way it is, because it's all parties in real estate that are not acting as professionals, right?
Sure.
So instead of doing that,
it's easier to blame the appraisers, Anthony.
Now, granted, if a guy comes out from a 530 area code, or he's calling you from a 209, are you familiar with this area? Appraiser's going to say this or that, and there's some guys who just have no common sense, and they'll say, no, I've only appraised 2 houses there in the last 5 years.
Right.
And then you're saying, hey, you know what, I refuse to use this guy. But again, this goes back to trying to slap them with ego, or try to, make them say, what person is going to say, hey, I'm not educated enough.
Right.
I don't have geographic competency.
Nobody.
Who's going to do that?
Anybody will.
Exactly. So what's the purpose of questioning them?
That's true.
So it's
But
about
I was just saying
what
that
can
you
you do to
could
protect
do it
yourself?
if you had to.
You could, but what can you do to protect the sale? Is give them
Again,
enough
bring them-
information,
right.
educate them.
Right, give them enough information
There we
to, quote unquote, sway the appraisal.
The views being expressed are the views of Sharon McCormick, not Better Homes and Gardens or any of its affiliates.
That's a nice door key.
Wow,
This is
yeah.
amazing.
Good thing we're recording this. So it really, because the rebuttal process goes back through the lending channel, right? The part of the importance here is making sure that you work with a lender that you have a strong and deep relationship with. And if you're on the listing side, getting them pre-approved with your lender that you've worked with a lot, perhaps a city or land home / one of our preferred providers like the Home Loan Group is not a bad idea, shameless plug. But making sure that you have confidence in who the lending partner is on the other side of your transaction as a listing agent or as a buyer's agent, making sure that you have confidence in who your client is working with from the lending side. Because the more access you have for communication, the higher the likelihood that you can get some of, not all, but some of your lending and appraisal issues ironed out, because that's going to be the spear point for the rebuttal and for trying to get another pair of eyes on your appraisal. Yes? Because you, as an appraiser, look, I met you at the house. If I'm a smart agent, I'm going to ask you for your card. We're going to trade cards. And if the appraisal comes in short, I've got your phone number. Mm-hmm. I can give you a call. But you're basically going to tell me, hey, look, I can't do anything until the bank says. We may have a dialogue around it, but absolutely. You're not changing your appraisal because I called you. The only reason you're going to change your appraisal is because the lender requests you to put another pair of eyes on it.
You cannot just submit something. There's right. Some banks where I can, because I do a lot of non-lending. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do. But yes, definitely. And again, you're going to have those couple guys who say, you know what, I screwed up on this. And they'll call the AE and say, you know what, I need to resubmit this. Can you pop this for revision? And I'm not above that. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody misses something or, adjustment, or there was a glitch. So, yes, you can have a dialogue with them, but make sure you go through immediately, get that report, look at it. Are the time adjustments there? Are the list price to sales price ratio adjustments there? And then work down from there, because those are concrete. Those are something you can prove with multiple sites that the appraiser didn't recognize the current market, and then submit it to the lender, because spending a day getting hold of an appraiser when he knows you got the appraisal, you're upset, he's not calling you back, he's doing other things.
Right.
So get that information together, make it solid, make it third party, get it to the lender, because at the same time, too, a lot of these AMCs, right, they're pressured because there is so much chaos going on that if the appraiser is deemed incompetent, mm-hmm. they will have to refund that money or do that appraisal for free. And that AMC is in business to make money.
So they've got to because we're not used to that language, is the appraisal
management company, the vendor, right? The firewall between the bank and you. So if they have to keep returning money for this guy, he's off the panel.
Right.
And not everybody's dealing in a pool. Bank of America deals in some pools, but you've got a lot of these guys who, they have a short list of guys that they work with.
I've even heard with a lot of lenders, so long as the appraiser is in the pool, you can still request appraisal and appraiser. Is that true or false? So long as Anthony Young and Associates is in the Bank of America pool, can I request an appraisal?
Yeah, there's always loops to it. And another thing too is having a bank where, number one, if it's FHA, making sure that they know they do not have to use an appraisal management company. Mm-hmm. They can go direct. The second thing is, getting signed up, getting your banks or whoever you're dealing with to sign up with Mercury Networks, right? Mm-hmm. Or Lender X. Again, you can pick your own appraiser. Mm-hmm. There's all these different loopholes that I don't think guys know about and how they can still work with the people they've established relationships with over the last 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. There's still ways around it. It's just, how do you find that?
No. Okay. So best appraisers are infinitely and intimately familiar with the neighborhood they work in. We talked about this a little bit, but the big run-up in prices and maybe even some of what seems to be slowing as an appreciation rate right now, which I guess would make appraisals a little easier. But how does shifts in the market influence what happens in the appraisal process? How does an appraiser, so from your brain, right? So when you sit down and do an appraisal, how do you determine the trend line for a neighborhood? What do you use?
The information in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. It comes down to that. Again, it's not from a macro perspective. It's from a micro.
When you say information in the neighborhood,
the neighborhood, the cells that are, what directly competes with the property. Just like, for instance, we look at all ships don't rise and fall in the sea at the same time.
Right.
Okay, so we're looking at a neighborhood and say you've got the Prius house. Mm-hmm. Just because the Prius is doing good doesn't mean Toyota is doing good or the trucks are doing good, right? So don't give me a bunch of cells that are a 3,000 square foot house and say, oh, look at the trend here.
Prius,
we've
really?
got a 15.
We went with Prius?
Yeah, because, it's been on my mind lately.
All right.
I was going to buy you one for your birthday.
Oh, thanks. What? Yeah.
So
you do? Right.
So it comes directly.
You can have mine.
It comes directly from the comps the properties that compete with the subject. So it's not about looking at anything else. It comes directly from those, and they're going to show you a trend once you weed through the information. Just like, for instance, I tell appraisers in the Bay Area, I say, hey, email the agents because it's less passive. They can just reply to an email about concessions. It's important about concessions because we need to get down to what the raw cash to cash exchange was.
Right.
So.
Okay. So Anthony, you've given us 3 steps we can take when a value does not come in. 3 simple steps we can take. Walk us through these quickly.
Basically, again, starting at location adjustments, making sure that the comps are from the same neighborhood, right? If you know they're from a different area, instead of just saying from your personal experience or this neighborhood sells higher, go to the third party, prove it there with the median price. And basically, it's just taking the median price of that neighborhood that the subject's in, comparing it to the median price of the comps neighborhood, and converting it to a percentage. You can keep it raw and say, hey, this neighborhood median price is 160. Ours is 230.
Right.
Or you can get a little bit more technical and convert that to a percentage and say this comp should have had a 4% upward adjustment.
Okay. Good.
The second one is compare the appraiser statements and the market trends against what they put on the 1004MC. And again,
What's the 1004MC?
The 1004MC is the market conditions form that's within every single appraisal. They built this form as a part of the big change of, trying to close the barn doors after the cows have left, that whole thing, right? But that information all has to go together. If they're saying the market's going up and the 1004MC in the report says the market's going up, but they made no time adjustments, guess what? You can point them out right there and kill it right there.
Okay.
And say, hey, where are the time adjustments? Just that simple.
Okay. And then the third one?
Did the appraiser make a list price to sales price ratio adjustment? And that's important because, again, in most appraisals, you're required a listing and a pending or two pendings because they show today's market, and that's why the bank started doing that, even though our firm's been doing it since the beginning because it shows current day.
Yep.
But the thing is that you still cannot use that raw number. A pending is still dated. It's still history. The meeting of the minds was still 15 days ago, 30 days ago. And when you have a neighborhood that's increasing at 2, 3, 4% per month, that needs to be adjusted up as if it's sold today, the day that we go out and appraise the property. So making sure those are there, because again, they're going to say, well, I don't care what the sold did because look at the listings. The listings are lower than your purchase price. Well, okay, guess what? Did you know that there's a 7% list price to sales price ratio in this adjustment in this neighborhood?
Okay.
That's our gap.
All right. So there's 3 simple steps you can take when a value doesn't come in to rebut or begin the rebuttal process to help your properties come in at value. Sharon, I want to thank you for your contribution in our radio show today. Anthony, thank you for the Prius, first of all, because I can't wait to eBay that.
Black or silver?
Either one, because I'm going to sell it. So.
You said you're going to give it to me.
I'm
No,
just
I
gonna put
lied.
a big Better Home Than Garden Mason-McDuffie logo along the side.
Perfect. I will still sell a Prius if you give me one.
Fine.
Anthony, thank you for your time and the Prius. I really appreciate you coming in as an appraiser to share with us sort of not your side of the coin because we all work on the same coin, but appreciate you coming in to share your insights on the process with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So quick reminder before we close out the radio show, we are going to be having the listing one-day intensive in the wine country. For those of you who attended the listing one-day intensive here that we did in the East Bay in Alamo, it's a great half day where we spend nothing but energy on helping agents get better at mastering their listing presentation and really having an effective process. There's an old real estate adage that says listers last. And the reason that that's true is because listings bring buyers today. Buyers bring listings in 7 to 10 years. If you have a listing right now, you should turn that into a buy-side transaction. There's not a more important approach to residential real estate than to growing your personal listing inventory. It's important enough to us that Chief Strategic Officer Rich Casto and myself are we developed a curriculum and we're spending one full day where we take the best practices from the top listing agents in the country. And we've distilled that down in the country and in the company. We've distilled it down to help share that process with all the agents. So if you missed the one that's here, that we had here a week ago or 2 weeks ago in the East Bay, you can make the road trip up to the wine country. It's going to be in Santa Rosa. See, I knew that.
Fargo Center for the Arts.
At the Wells Fargo Center for the Arts in Santa Rosa. It's from 9 to 1 on Thursday, the 8th. And we do have room. We could add a few if we needed to. So if you missed the one that we had here earlier or late last month, do not miss this opportunity. Go ahead and spend a long weekend in the wine country. Enjoy yourself while you're up there. Get educated on Thursday and then try to kill those brain cells on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We have a request to bring it to Tahoe or Roseville. Okay, we'll work on that. Not a bad idea at all. So one-day listing intensive coming up on Thursday. Still a little bit of room available, so if you want to sneak in, if you missed it, if you If you did miss it, ask around your office. We had almost 300 agents there. I promise you that you will get great feedback from the agents who attended. Yeah, Sharon, you went?
Yes.
Yeah, what'd you think?
Worth it.
Yeah.
Well worth it.
Yeah. I promise you will come away with a minimum of 1 or 2 good ideas that you could fold at least. It's a very great mix of strategic and tactical. We'll spend energy on how to approach thinking about your listing presentation, but we'll also spend energy on how to tactically communicate with sellers so that you can be more efficient. And you can't beat the price. It's completely free, 100% free. All you got to do is show up and feed your brain, and then we also have a continental breakfast so you can feed your tummy as well. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Anthony's going to go now. That's good to know. Thanks, everyone, for listening and enjoying the radio show today, and go out and make it a great week.